Yes, students. So we had in the previous session, we had started with this 620. Okay, let us quickly have a recap of what we had learned. In SA 620, we spoke about the scope. Okay, scope is other than accounting and auditing. When you talk about scope, other than accounting and auditing, okay, that expertise relates to, and a management expert is not part of this. Like, what is your objective? You need to check whether can you use, and second, then determine the adequacy. If you decide to use adequacy, now who is an expert? It can be a person, organization, inside appointed by you or consulted by you. Now, in which all areas you need that expertise? In financial instrument valuation, land valuation, actuarial valuation, your estimates, oil and gas, natural gas reserves estimates. Okay, so your tax implications and your litigations and claims. So these are all the examples of areas where you can take the help of an expert. Now, how do you achieve this objective? So we had seen the requirement. The very first requirement is determine the need. Okay, do you have the need for an expert, auditor's expert? The first consideration here is how they are going to assist. Okay, so they assist to understand, to identify the risk, to design the overall response, further audit procedures. And second question, can I become expert? Yes, how? Education. Okay, here we have got 5 points. Through education, experience, and your discussion with the other auditors having similar experiences. 3 elements. The third thing, okay, what factors you consider to decide whether you need now? So we have got around 4 factors there, which includes your management expert has been used, significance of the matter, nature of the matter, risk, and the expected nature of the auditor's knowledge about the work of the expert. Okay, how much you know. Then the last element about the management expert. What if the management expert has been used? No, should I use their work or not? What are the factors you consider? Okay, there are around 6 factors: their nature and scope, their risk, their competency, their performance standards. Okay, do the entity controls their work? These are all the factors you consider. Then the second requirement is all about nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedures. Okay, that depends on what, like when you include the expert. Okay, once you figure out that yes, you need. Now, do you need it immediately? Do you need at the end of the year? Do you need for the full year? Do you need only for 1 month? Okay, and what type of work they are going to do, what type of work you are going to do, that depends upon, again, very similar factor, that depends upon the nature of the matter. Okay, nature, timing, extent depends on nature of the matter, significance of the matter, risk, auditor's knowledge and experience with the work, and SQC1 of the third party. Now, one more question comes, okay, under what circumstances require extensive involvement by the auditor? Okay, so we had that significant matter, if the matter is very significant or highly risky area, if not previously used, and experts work is an integral to audit. Okay, I'll explain you this particular point. Okay, point number 4, expert performing the audit procedures are integral to audit. What is this integral to audit? There can be 2 scopes, friends. When you consult an expert, okay, there are 2 elements involved. One is integral to audit and not integral to audit. Like, for example, if an auditor seeks the help of, like, consults an expert, like heart specialist, it's not that a heart specialist is going to do the operation, right? Now, if somebody is going to do the operation, then you say that it is very integral. Then you have to be extremely careful. Who is that heart specialist? What is their success rate? Okay, all those factors you have to consider. But if you have to just consult a heart specialist, do you need to do such an extensive research on about that heart specialist? Okay, who is that? What is his success rate and all? Not required, because you are just consulting. If you are not happy with this consultation, you can take a second opinion. Okay, similarly, as an auditor, when you take consultations, because when you take a consultation, majority of the work or procedures are done by the auditor himself. You just took their consultation, like related to the valuation of a building, or okay, best example I can say valuation of financial instrument. Now, financial instrument says that you have to have a discounted cash flow method. You have to find out the present value of the future cash inflows coming to that financial asset and do the calculation. You had certain doubts about some fair valuation. You consulted one independent derivative expert. Now, but entire calculations are done by you only. So now, since it is consultation, it is not integral. But if the entire derivative valuation has been done by the expert himself and he has given one single number to you, and you don't know much about that number, then we can call it as an integral. So if somebody's work is to be integral to the audit process, then the extent of involvement of the auditor should be more. And if that third party expert is not subject to the firm's quality control and procedure, then your extent of involvement should be more. I hope this point, integral part is, I hope it's clear. So we'll move on to the next element now. The point number 3, that is called a competency and capability. I told you today in the previous example that somebody, your boss has purchased 5 crore rupees worth of a painting. Now, which painter should be appointed? What should be their competency? What should be their integrity, objectivity? That is the factor you need to consider, right? Because if somebody is not competent, then what type of assurance they are going to give? Somebody is not objective. When they are not objective, imagine they have been already associated with this client. Then their objectivity will be lost. Because if this is your boss, he has purchased, this is your client, sorry, he has purchased this picture based on the advice of so and so expert. Now, if you hire him only, not aware that this guy has already given an advice, then there is an objectivity issue. Will he tell, no, it's not worth 5 crore? Okay. So the third element, because at this point of time you have to figure out now who should be that expert. The auditor shall evaluate whether the expert has necessary competency, capability, and objectivity for the auditor's purpose. So in the case of auditor's expert, the evaluation of objectivity shall include inquiry regarding interest and the relationships that can create threat to the objectivity. As I told you, if the auditor's expert is already connected to you in some way, that means he may have some interest or he may have some relationship with the client. In such case, no objectivity will be lost. So in case of expert work subject to technical, okay, this is the one thing. And if their work is subject to technical performance standards or any industry requirements and other membership requirements, okay, accreditation standards or licensing authority imposed by the law or regulation. That means, are they member of any association, like qualified association, like for example ICI? If somebody is a member of ICI, then automatically you have got to, you can make certain assumption that their competence must be good. Okay, their capability must be good, their objectivity must be good. So I told you today morning only why it is like that. Okay, so whether their work is subject to any standards, are they supposed to do the work as per any standards? See, whenever we have to do the audit, we have to do as per standards for auditing. Like this, when we say valuation of the derivative, are they supposed to do valuation through any standard? Okay, so this is what we need to inquire, because this gives us more clarity about the objectivity of that expert. I hope it's clear. Now, other matters that may be relevant include relevance of the auditor's expert competence to the matter to which that expert work will be used, including areas of specialty with that expert's field. Okay, what is this relevance of the matter? Like, there is one person called a heart specialist. First of all, is he an expert? Answer is yes. But if you go to any problem related to kidney, will he be able to address you? He is an expert, but he is not relevant to you. So when you talk about any expert, okay, they need to have that relevant competence. Like when you talk about an actuary can be, there are different types of actuary. We don't know. For us, actuary is one. The chartered accountant, we say. Like I spent 10 years in, say, IT industry, and suddenly you come and tell me, say, do this particular, say, whatever, one audit you do. See, I never spent time in audit. In such cases, no, it becomes very difficult. My competence may not match. So this is the first thing you may have to consider when you talk about competency. Is that competency is relevant? A particular actuary may specialize in property. See, they have given an example, and casualty insurance, but may have limited expertise related to pension calculation. So he may be belonging to one association, okay? He may be very objective. He may be his work may be subject to certain professional standards. But if he has not having relevant experience, then his competence may not be relevant to you. Now, auditors expert competence with regard to relevant accounting and auditing requirements, like knowledge of assumptions and methods, include models that is consistent with the applicable reporting framework. Like for example, if we have to do a derivative valuation. Now, derivative valuation has to be done as per FVTPL. Who is telling me? Ind AS 109. Now, Ind AS 113 talks about the fair valuation standard. Now, it will tell you certain elements of like what should be the valuation of FVTPL, what is the observable input 1, observable input 2. It gives us certain guidelines. Now, does that expert knows about these guidelines of financial reporting framework? Tomorrow, he is doing one sort of valuation which may not be applicable from the reporting point of view. From another perspective, that may be perfect work. From investment perspective, it may be very relevant work. But from my reporting, accounting point of view, it may not be. So second question comes, when you talk about the competence, do they have that knowledge about my financial reporting framework? Now, whether unexpected events and change in conditions and audit evidence obtained from the result of audit procedure indicate it may be necessary to reconsider evaluation competency capability. So this is also you need to consider. Sometimes unexpected events can happen, changes in the conditions can happen, okay, and this can result into like suddenly there is a defined contribution plan and they shifted to defined benefit plan. Okay, in India's 19 you are going to learn about it. So here what happened, no, your valuation was very simple, but here it becomes complicated. So the moment any unexpected event happen or changes in the conditions happen, you have to consider the competency capability, because sometime back you may be requiring one type of expert, but suddenly you may require a change. So these are all the factors you may have to consider when you talk about the competency and the capability. So these can be written in the form of a pointer, students. I hope you are clear. So once you have figured out that you need an expert now, and you may involve extensively or may not involve extensively, you have to consider the competency and objectivity. Objectivity you can consider by checking the technical professional standards and their relationship. Competency you can check whether it is relevant, whether they know the relevant accounting and auditing pronouncements, and any changes in the conditions happen. Now, evaluation of significant threats to the objectivity and need for safeguards. Now, evaluation of significant threats, whether there is a need for safeguard, depend upon the role of auditor's expert and their significance of the work. If the proposed auditor is an individual who has played a significant role in preparation of the information that is being audited, then that is if the auditor's expert is the management expert. I already told you, like your client has purchased the photograph on the advice of one person. Now he become like a management expert. Now, can you hire him as an auditor's expert? Answer is no. Why? Because he has been already involved and playing a very significant role in preparation of their financial information. When these people finalized the P&L balance sheet, they said 5 crore valuation is based on this person's advice. Because this is on his advice only 5 crore amount was paid. So this is the you have to check significant, right? Now, evaluating the objectivity. So what is that? How you should know? How you should evaluate? One, inquire the interest or relationship that entity has with the external expert. Discuss any safeguards applicable, okay, including any professional requirements that apply to the expert. Evaluate whether safeguards are adequate. And the interest and relationship can have the financial interest, business or any personal relationship can be there. He may be giving some other type of services. Okay, in some cases it may be appropriate to obtain the written representation. So this is how you are going to address the objectivity and competency related issues. It's the same point they have told here. So if you see, these are all the same issues. First of all, you need to inquire with that and check is there any interest or the relationship, and what type of interest. It can be financial interest, business relationship, or you could be giving some service. And finally, you have to take a representation from the expert. Okay, so with this you are done up to hiring of the expert. See, if you are going to hire an expert, first thing you need to check whether do you have a need. Yes, we have a need. Second, when, right now. Third, who, the one who is competent and objective. Chalo, you hired it. What is next now? After hiring, will you hand over the entire work to them? No, because after you hire, you need to have an understanding of the field of the expertise. Like, for example, you took the audit of the ONGC for the first time. You never knew what do you mean by velocity. Means you knew, you must have left in 8th or 9th standard only, velocity, okay, density. But when you are going to an audit of an ONGC, see, these are all the very important terminologies which you should be understanding. What does it mean? Okay, because if your inventory valuation is to happen, like what all these factors, how this can contribute to them. Like tomorrow you go to a gold manufacturing company, diamond manufacturing company, there are certain processes which you may not be aware about it. But once you have gone there and taken the position as an auditor, are you not supposed to learn it? This is called obtaining understanding of the field of expertise. Otherwise, what happens? No, you will be totally in the darkness. You will not be knowing. See, you need not become that expert. Please understand. But at least something you should be knowing about that field of expertise so that you can question them. So, auditor should obtain sufficient understanding of the field of expertise so as to you can determine the nature, scope, and objectives of the expert work. Like to what extent they have to do, what type of work they have to do, and they can check the adequacy of the expert's work. That means you need not have that in-depth knowledge like an expert because you are not that expert. But at least you need to have certain basic knowledge so that you can question them. Like for example, you have taken your car to a service garage. Now, they will open the bonnet and they will say this problem is there, that problem. Are you not going to try to understand now? Okay, you will ask them questions. What is the implication? Okay, what if this is going to happen? Is it going to stop me while traveling? Like this, no? With such type of questions, you get a better understanding about that. How the engines are working, how they are connected. You need not become that mechanic, but at least you have to have so that you can take a decision. Like what should be the scope? Should I give the repair? Should I replace the part? Because it is ultimately your decision. What should be the nature of the work to be carried out? And is that adequate? I hope it's clear. Yes. Now, see, you decided who and you start to get understanding also. Now you need to have an agreement with the auditor's expert. Yeah, because this person is the third party. So you need to agree in writing what should be the nature, scope, and objective of the expert work, like what they are supposed to do, what all the areas they need to cover, to what extent, and what is that final objective, like what is that report they are supposed to give you. Now, what is the role of the auditor and what is the role of the expert? And the nature, timing, and extent of the communication which should happen between the auditor and the expert, and what type of report to be provided by the expert. So, okay, this is what generally happens. See, again, I can connect to this. Do you need the specialist right now? Okay, to what extent you should get involved? Should I only consult or should I get admitted? Who should be that doctor who should be doing audit? You start understanding what is heart, what is brain, everything. Because once we get exposed to such illness, we start making inquiry, we start understanding it. Otherwise, what do we know? Tell me, brain tumor, what do we know about it? But when it happens to us, we start inquiring, we try to understand why it happens. Okay, what is the reason? At least our knowledge will be something better than yesterday. We will not remain blind to what is brain tumor. So once you have got that, then you will have a formal agreement, like a contract act. Contract comes into picture, where you define your role, they define their role, the fees, the communication, the report format, everything will get finalized. So when the work of the auditor's expert related to the auditor's conclusion regarding significant risk, both formal written report at the conclusion of the expert's work and oral reports as the work progresses may be appropriate. That means if the work is related to something significant risk, there are 6 type of significant risk, like fraud risk, related party, outside normal course of business, complex operations, etc. If your experts work related to any of these areas, so one thing is they are going to give one report at the end, right? But since they are significant, you may ask for oral reports from time to time. Like you may tell them, please update me from time to time. Now, identification of a specific partner, staff, who is going to liaise, who is going to have that relationship with the auditor's expert, procedures for communication, timely effective communication, etc. All these things should be decided as part of the nature, timing, and extent of communication. So when you talk about communication, there can be two types of communication: oral communication and the report. Report is generally given at the end. So if it's the risky area, they may have to have an oral communication also. And the last thing, the need to observe the confidentiality, because now a lot of information, students, this is very particularly if you get the audit of defense company and all. See, a lot of confidentiality has to be ensured, because somebody can gets a lot of access to the books, like your documentation, your client's documentation, their data, their sensitive data. See, you are bound by confidentiality as per ICA professional ethics, but if that expert is also bound, that's why we have to check, do they belong to any professional body? Okay, is there any standards applicable to them? So you have to have an expert, a confidentiality report, that all the data what that expert is going to get will be kept confidential. Yes, let us see one test your knowledge 8 questions, friend. First time we are coming across any question in this standard. Now, X had net worth of 1300 crore, because of which Ind AS becomes applicable to them. The company has various derivative contracts, options, forwards, swaps, etc., which were required to be fair valued, and the company got the fair valuation done. 1 minute. The company has got the fair valuation done through an external third party. Okay, when you read up to here, somewhere it should strike to you, external third party valuation has been done. Are they talking about SA 620? Yeah, because this context looks like 620. Now the statutory auditor involved an auditor's expert. So by now you are very clear that this is about SA 620, because external third party is your management expert. But when the management expert comes, this chapter has been already discussed at the intermediate level. They are not going to give you any case-based questions like this. They may ask you only MCQs. So auditor's expert is the keyword. Auditor and auditor's experts were new to each other, because of which they have to be very extensive involvement now. Already we have seen. That is, they were working for the first time, but developed a good bonding during the course of audit. The auditor did not enter into any formal agreement. Please advise. Okay, so this is wrong. Auditor is supposed to enter, because requirement number 5 says you have to enter into written report. It doesn't matter do you have a cordial relationship with them or not. Okay, so you have to, there is a belief that there is a good bonding can return the oral agreement, but you say no, you have to do it, you have to have a written agreement. Okay, now situation where arises the need for detailed agreement with the auditor. As per SA 620, using the work of an auditor's expert, the nature, scope, and objective of the auditor's work and the extent of communication between the auditor may vary considerably with the circumstances. Okay, so what they are talking here, the nature, timing, extent of communication between the auditors. Is this the point? It may significantly vary, including any form of agreement with the auditor. It is therefore required that these matters are to be agreed between the auditor and the auditor's expert. Now, in certain situations, a detailed agreement in writing will be required. Now, which of those situations? For example, when the auditor's expert will have access to sensitive and confidential data, the matter to which auditor's work is highly complex, they are not previously worked, and the greater extent auditor's expert and significance in the context. Now, have they given you these points in the study material, students? If I go back to the study material, have they told these points? They are not told. You see here, where they are told that it is a highly complex area. Okay, so they have not told this. When you need to have a detailed agreement in writing, they said here that you need to have an agreement in writing, but a detailed agreement in writing, they didn't tell examples of situations. That's why, since it is coming only in your test your knowledge, I have marked it as a priority 1 question. Okay, so this is one extra point you need to understand. So in the given case, you should have signed an agreement letter with an auditor's expert with respect to, because they both are new to each other, because this is the point which they are talking about. They are not previously used to the expert's work. I hope it's clear. Yeah, so you have got this one more MTP question. M Mohan Limited to comply with Ind AS Mohan Limited. Okay, so Ind AS 109 for PAR valuation has to be done. It involves an auditor's expert to verify the accuracy of the valuation. CA Paras engaged expert Sohan. Paras and Sohan are new to each other, a good bonding, so they did not enter into any formal agreement. Please advise. Okay, I think similar thing, nature, scope and communication may vary significantly. These are all the 4 areas. So considering 620, their complexity involved in the valuation and they are new to each other. That's why they have to have an agreement in writing. Okay, I think it's the same. I can club it. We can ignore it, MTP August 25, because I can club with the same thing with here. Yes, I hope you are clear. Yes, so we can have one mind map also simultaneously. We can write it. So we had written a point about the competency and objectivity. Okay, what is that really required here? One, evaluate. Whether experts' work is subject to technical performance standards. Second, relevant competence. I can say like that, one word, relevant competence. That means their competence is very relevant to the audit. Competence of accounting and audit requirements. That means their work should be connected to, they should be having understanding. Then what you need to consider? Consider unexpected events and changes in conditions. And the last, inquire interest and relationship. Okay, so what type of inquiry it is? Financial interest, business relationships, provision of service, yeah, this type of thing, and obtain written representation. Yeah, any question they ask you on integrity and objectivity and competency, yeah, you can write all these points, friends. You always write, make it a habit to write these points. Okay, if they talk about the integrity and the objectivity and competency, you say First of all, you check whether they are subject to technical and professional standards. Do they have relevant competence? Do they have the competence related to accounting and auditing requirements? Consider the unexpected changes and conditions. Inquire about their relationship and the interest and relationship, and obtain written representation. Enough. The next point we need not write in detail. I can simply say obtain understanding of field of expertise. Obtain understanding of field of expertise. Yeah, we can simply say you need to please obtain. The reason, you can decide the nature and scope and evaluate the adequacy. Yeah, point number 5 is very important. Written agreement. So what you should have included? One, nature, scope, objective. Yes, any contract, you will have the nature, scope, and objective, respective roles. Nature, timing, extent of communication, like whether oral communication or written communication, with whom to communicate. Observe confidentiality. Okay, so they need to have a confidentiality. So sometimes we can say detailed written agreement. We may have to have detailed written agreement. When is that? This is there. These are all the points when you need to have. When you have got confidential info, access to confidential info, both are new to each other, work is complex. This content is given in the test your knowledge. Greater reliance on experts. Okay, under these 4 circumstances, you may have to have a detailed written agreement. Otherwise, you need not have such a detailed written agreement. Hope it is done. It's clear. Yes. So next one. See, with this, no, I can say we have done with the, okay, with my first requirement only, we are done with the first objective. Now, I need to check the adequacy of the work. Okay, next point number 6. Evaluating adequacy of work. Yeah, this is very important, students, and already it has come for the examination in your May 25 exam. Anyhow, we cannot say, let's see the examination question, did they ask you completely or not? But you have to understand this. What is, how to evaluate an adequacy of the work. So students, I hope your flow is very clear. First thing, you decided the need. Second, when, once you say yes, when, how. Third, you said who, competency. Fourth, you started to understand the field. Work has not started. You have got a written agreement. Now the expert has started doing his job. Because once you have a written agreement, you would have told when to start, what to start and all. So now he will start working. So as part of the communication, he may be telling you from time to time, or he may be giving you the report only at the end. Let us go to the second situation. He has given you the report. He said value of derivative is so and so rupees, or the value of this particular item, that portrait, is 5 crore rupees or 2 crore rupees, whatever. He could have given his observation. He has done his work now. So you told him, sir, please verify this portrait and is it worth 5 crore. So he has done and given his report and say value is rupees X. You called him, sir, please check this value of the building, how much it is. So he came, he followed his method, procedures, and he said, look, the value of this building is so much, rupees X. Now question comes, shall I straight away accept its work? The answer is no. You have to check the evaluate or check the adequacy of the work. This is this point number 6. Okay, so remember there are 3 elements you need to verify. The points are very simple. It says, okay, before that I'll give an analogy to you. Then only I can explain you this. Now imagine if I show you one picture. Okay. Now which is this tree? You, by looking at this tree, you say, sir, this is coconut tree. Now, see, since you know what it is, you don't need to ask someone. You need not consult someone. I hope you're clear. But for the first time in your life, you are seeing this tree. You don't know what this tree is all about. Now, you will seek an expert. Now, expert will come. He will study this tree. And finally, he will give you one report. And he says that this is a grape tree. Now, immediately you laugh, sir, this is not tree. See, I know, you can question him. But what if you don't know? You end up listening to him. No, if he says it's a grape tree, it's grape tree. If he says it's apple tree, you will say apple tree. Why? Because you are not aware. That's an area of expertise. It is not related to accounts and audit. Now, will you accept it? Is that work relevant? Is it relevant to you? No, his work is totally not relevant. And second, why? Because it should have been some other work, some other tree, but he's telling it's the apple tree or coconut tree. Or he said it is coconut tree, but he says in this coconut tree 1 lakh coconuts are grown. Now you tell students whether his findings are reasonable. Well, first question is whether his finding is relevant. Is it relevant to what you are trying to prove? Second, is it reasonable? It is unreasonable. Why? Because in a coconut tree, 1 lakh coconuts will not grow. If the coconut is of size of a grape, then 1 lakh coconuts could have been there. See, this is the problem happens if you don't work on the expert's report and take it as it is, because whatever they told, you would have accepted it. So the first thing you need to evaluate whether their findings and their conclusions are relevant and reasonable. Okay, how do you come to know whether their work is? First thing, you may have to inquire. You need to have better understanding, like how did you do, what is that? Then check the review, their work papers. You see what they have done, how they figured out that which tree it is. And then you may have to perform some procedures like observing their work, okay, witnessing, taking the help of another, like we call it second opinion. Then you may have to discuss with the auditor, and finally you discuss with the management, because ultimately this tree belongs to the management. No, go and ask them, sir, my expert is telling this, what is your opinion? See, when you perform all these activities, like you are discussing with the management, you're discussing with the expert, you are reperforming, okay, you talk to somebody who is knowing about this matter, you review their work, you make an inquiry to the expert. See, all these activities gives you a confidence related to the relevance and the reasonableness of the finding. Like when the experts, when the heart surgeon says there is a heart block, see, will you accept it straight away? So you may inquire, no, you may inquire more, you may take a second opinion, you may discuss with your family members, and then you take a decision. Okay, is that reasonable or is it relevant? Followed, no? So similarly, students, auditor also has to check whether their work is relevant and reasonable. Second, once you see that their work is relevant and reasonable, since you will be using assumptions, plus you will be using certain methods to calculate, you need to check whether those assumptions and assumptions are reasonable and relevant. Okay, so what is this concept of an assumption and a method? Students, like whatever examples we have taken, like litigation, you take the example of litigation, you take the example of your derivative valuation, financial instrument valuation, building valuation, oil estimations. See, everything is a matter of an estimate. Somebody has to estimate, because if something could have been accurately measured, then first of all, why do you need an expert? You only could have measured it. Now, as estimate comes into picture, always certain assumptions will come into picture. So what is an assumption? Your this belief, it is an expectation that things will be so and so. Like if you are making a provision for, say, retirement benefits, you make certain assumptions that my attrition rate is 6%, death rate will be so and so, some people may move my organization, some people may stay in the organization. These are all the assumptions you make. Plus, you will use certain methods to calculate it. Discounted cash flow method. This is one of the methods. Or you can calculate the value of the share price by PE method, price earning ratio method. Dividend discount model method. See, there are different methods. Now the question comes, first of all, their findings are reasonable and relevant. Okay, Bob. But have they, the assumptions what they have taken to do these calculations, to get this output, or the methods what they have used, is it relevant to my financial reporting framework, and is it reasonable? This is what they need to understand. And the third element they need to understand is source data. On which data they took that opinion? Like heart specialist. Now, by looking at you, you cannot take a decision, no, that there is a heart block. There should have been one ECG scanning should have been done. Now, whose ECG scanning they have referred? There is a possibility, no, your report and another patient's report must have got swapped by chance. Now, have they communicated their findings by relying on the right source data? It should not happen that some other party's ECG report they have told and shown and told, okay, there is nothing, no worry for you, or there are two blocks right now, emergency operation has to happen. That's why you have to take care that the doctor is taking the right decision based on the proper source data. All the three things has to be verified in audit also. So when you talk about the evaluating the adequacy, this has to be written and practiced. Okay, you have to write and practice. 1. Relevance and reasonableness of the experts' findings and conclusions and their consistency with the other evidences. Okay, the very first thing you need to understand how much their findings and their conclusions are relevant and reasonable. Now, specific procedures to evaluate the adequacy of the expert's work may include, you may have to inquire, review their report and the working papers, and you may have to perform some collaborative procedures like observing their work, examining some published data, statistical reports. Okay, don't you do Googling and all. Before you go, don't you ask ChatGPT. This is like, you get a fair idea like what that expert is talking. Confirming relevant parties with the third parties. Like if somebody has got already operated, you go and speak to them. performing some analytical procedures, whether principles of materiality aspects are considered, and reperforming these calculations and discuss with another expert. We can call it as a second opinion. Okay, when this expert has given an opinion to you, and if you are not happy, you talk to another expert or you discuss the report with the manager. So, how do you obtain understanding of the adequacy of the work? These are all the procedures they are supposed to follow. With this, you can understand the relevance and the reasonableness of the findings. Whether their findings are reasonable or not, you have to perform these activities. Second, if that expert's work involves use of significant assumptions, yes, generally it will be involved, and the methods, then you have to see whether those methods and assumptions are reasonable in the given circumstance. Okay. So auditor's expert's work is to evaluate under. Okay. Now one question comes. See, why that expert has been appointed? See, there can be two reasons that expert could have been appointed. One, he could have appointed to do some estimation. You understand this tricky thing. SA 540 we will understand in detail. His first purpose of appointment is to do estimate. In such cases, he has to make certain assumptions. Are you clear about this? In the second case, he might have been hired not to do the estimate, but management has done certain estimates. Now, while management has done the estimate, they have been taken certain assumptions. Now, this expert is called just to verify that assumption. Now they are telling, see, read here. When the expert's work is to evaluate the underlying assumptions and the methods, like whether the model what they have used is correct or not. See, here I am not asking you to do the calculation. Already management has done a calculation, taking certain models, taking certain methods. So I am calling that expert and please see, please verify. Now, used by the management in developing estimates, the audit procedures are likely to be primarily directed to evaluating whether the expert has adequately reviewed those assumptions and methods. So your job is to see whether the assumptions and methods, have you reviewed it? Have you gone through that assumption? And when the expert's work is to develop an auditor's point estimate, this, you do the estimate and give me. Or auditor's range of comparison with the management point estimates. What is point estimates? You give me one single, okay, 5 crore is the value of that portrait. No, you tell me what should be its value. Okay, its value is 4 crore 80 lakhs. This is called a point estimate. So its value can range between 4.5 crore to 5 crore. This is called a range estimates. So an expert could have been appointed to develop a point estimate or a range estimate. In such case, auditor's procedures may be primarily directed in evaluating assumptions, methods, including the models, whether appropriately used by the expert. So in the first case, if you are appointed to evaluate only the assumptions, you have to just see whether the review of assumptions have been done properly. In the second case, when they only have to calculate, then you have to evaluate the assumptions, methods and the models what they have been used. Now, SA 540, which we are going to discuss, discusses the assumptions and methods by the management in making estimates. Although that discussion is written in the context of auditor obtaining sufficient evidence, it may also assist in evaluating. That means they say that, okay, how to evaluate that assumptions and estimates? How should I do it? For this, they say, please refer SA 540. Now, this SA 540 talks about auditor's evaluation of the assumptions. And they say that same thing is applicable to the assumptions, evaluation of assumptions of the expert also. Anyhow, we will see that tomorrow. When the auditor's expert involves use of significant assumptions and methods, these are all the factors auditor shall evaluate, whether those assumptions are generally accepted in the auditor's expert's field. Like for example, they have made one defined benefit plan, like retirement benefit obligation, they have given one estimate. And they have considered 6% as the attrition rate. Is that assumption generally accepted in the industry? Or is it high or low? This is what you need to evaluate. Is it consistent with the financial reporting framework? Like they have taken the share price using say discounted cash flow method. Now, is your financial reporting framework is okay with this discounted cash flow method? Is that method fine? Or have they, like for example, financial reporting framework, Index 2, don't use LIFO. For example, inventory valuation, don't use LIFO. But the specialist who has been appointed, no, he has used a LIFO method to calculate inventory valuation. You see, student, this is what his method is not relevant. Why? Because his method is totally against what our financial reporting framework is telling. That means you cannot use his work now anymore. So, if he has done a valuation, has he followed the method which our financial reporting framework says? Dependent on the use of specialized model, is there any specialized models are there which has to be used and consistent with those of the management? And if, see, because one valuation would have been done by the management also. So management has done the evaluation of the share price based on the, say, discounted cash flow or a dividend discount model. And here they have come with the some like model called CAPM model. See, they are not consistent because both the models make different type of assumptions. So whatever model the expert is going to choose, is that in line with what management has done? Is there any special evaluations, special models are taken? These are the factors he has to evaluate. I hope students it's fine. Yeah, you can ask me again on this. And if the expert work involves use of the source data, that is very significant to the expert work, then you have to check the relevance, completeness, and accuracy of the source data. From which data he gave, from where he got. Is that correct? Is that complete? And is that relevant? So how do you do it? You verify the original data, including understanding of applicable testing, internal controls from where you got, and review the data for completeness and internal consistency. That means you sit and you again talk, who gave you this data? Is that data correct? Because if your data itself is wrong, your assumptions may be correct, methods may be correct, but your findings will be wrong. Okay. So first thing, you will evaluate whether the findings are relevant and reasonable. How? By inquiring with the management, by inquiring with the third party, by inquiring with another expert. Second, you will check whether the assumptions and methods are reasonable. And okay, what do you mean by this? Whether it is generally accepted in the industry, whether it is consistent with the financial reporting framework, whether they have used any significant specialized models. Okay, and is it in line with what management has used? These are all the 4 factors you evaluate. And the third one, whether the source data is relevant, complete, and accurate. Yes, let us see one examination question and illustration question, how they are going to ask you. Now, while doing the audit, RAM, the auditor requires a report from expert. Okay, this is the keyword for the purpose of audit. Now, what type of reports or opinions he can obtain and to what extent he can rely on this? Very good question, friends. Fantastic question. In November 10, this question was asked and now they have given. But in November 10, 2010 and all, they didn't had a case-based questions. But even look at the depth of the question, the way they have asked. Have they told you what exactly they are looking for here? They said, what type of reports or opinion you can obtain? Okay, so when you are telling types of opinion here, they are talking about areas of expertise that you have to tell. The first para, there was one picture, right? Inventory valuation, reserve valuation, for building valuation, legal. That point you need to tell here. What types of reports and opinion he can obtain? He has to tell. He can obtain about actuarial valuation, estimation of oil, interpretation of contract, analysis of the complex compliances. And second question, see, this is one part of the question. Then they said, and to what extent he can rely upon the same? How do we decide? Okay, for this, to what extent he can depend upon his evaluation. For this, he should evaluate the relevance and reasonableness of the findings and conclusions, relevance, reasonableness of the assumptions and the methods, and relevance and the, okay, relevance, completeness and accuracy of the source data. Now, how does he say whether assumptions and methods are relevant? For this, he checks generally accepted, consistent, dependence with the specialized model, and consistent with the management models. Okay, so like this, you have to see, students, what you can write, what you can explain here. Because this question, if it comes, you see there are two elements. They can ask you only this portion, or they can ask you only this portion. Or if it comes, you can assign 2 marks, 3 marks, or 3 marks, 2 marks. So you can write at least 3 points for each, minimum 3 points. Okay, so you might have forgot this point. Leave it. If you have written this, at least, that's also fine. They can award you 1 mark for this and 1 mark for this, and factors, I don't know, they may give you. But yeah, that's why you have to make one judgment. And if you remember, please write all the 3, because we don't know. I think we can leave this portion. Yes, so if the work is not adequate, he shall agree that expert nature and action and perform further audit procedure. Okay, let us see November 25, May 25, how they have asked in the examination. CAA has been appointed as an auditor of Datacom Limited to conduct the audit. They have got various derivative contracts, options, forward swaps, etc. required to be fairly valued, which the company got the valuation done to a third party. Do you see this question? This question similar, no? Same. Forwards contract, fair valuation done through a third party. See, this is the question which they have asked in MTP. And that last part is related to entering into formal agreement in your test your knowledge and MTP. Now you see in the examination, what they have asked. CA involved a registered valuer, CAA, who is a statutory auditor, involved a registered valuer as an auditor's expert. Okay, so this is the keyword. And you must be thinking that they will be asking in the examination about written part and all. But let us see here. To do the derivative in order to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. Now, CAA and S are new to each other and they are working for the first time. S has performed his work and submitted the report also. CAA, while evaluating the adequacy of the work, students, this particular element told you it is chapter number 3. Concept number 4. But in concept number 4, we have got 7 requirements. So this particular thing is going to tell that they are talking about requirement number 6 here. So he observed that experts' work involved use of significant assumptions and methods. Consequently, he wanted to test the relevance and reasonableness of those assumptions and methods in applicable circumstances. Guide CAA in this regard as per relevant standards on auditing. So first you are going to quote SA 600. This you have to quote in this question. So they are talking about the requirement number 6. That what are the audit procedures you are going to perform to ensure that your work is adequate. So you are going to talk about that SA relevance. You can talk about relevance, reasonableness and all. But if you see here, they are specifically talking here, he want to test the relevance and reasonableness of assumptions and methods. So here the question is very specific related to this part. You want to check relevance of the assumptions and methods. So they expect you to write these 4 points on this one. Means you can write these points and all other points, but you are not going to get any marks because the question is specifically related to this. So 1 mark probably you may get for this, and 3 or 4 marks you may get only to write this. And you are supposed to write this. Instead of this, you are writing relevance and relevant and reasonableness of the findings. Then you say that methods and assumptions. No, they are expecting you to write this particular question. So this question is still open. They can ask you question on the audit procedures. Now, KRP is that its AGM appointed Mr. X, Mr. Y and Mr. Z as joint auditors. Another fantastic question, friends. Very lovely question. Now you see here the twist which is going to come. Now they appointed joint auditors. So by looking at this joint audit, your mind will take you to chapter number 2, SA number 299. For the evaluation of the gratuity scheme of the company, Mr. X, Mr. Y and Z wanted to refer to their own actuary. Oh, that means all the 3 wanted to speak to their actuary, maybe internal office person or whoever. Now there is a difference of opinion came. Now all the joint auditors consulted their respective actuaries. Subsequently, a major difference was found in the, okay, now what happened? All people consulted their respective actuaries and they finalized. Later, there was a very big difference in the actuary reports. However, means each three person came with three different numbers. Like for example, what provision the management did, say 50 crore. Now this person sold 80 crore, another person told 20 crore, third party told 60 crore. So there is a wide difference in the three persons actuary report. However, X agreed to Mr. Y's actuary report. So suppose this person felt that okay, 20 crore doesn't look reasonable, 50 they have done. So he says, forget, I will trust your report. But this person is telling, no, it should be 80 only. So now two people have agreed. So for which Z did not agree. Now Mr. X contends that Y's actuary report shall be considered in audit report due to majority of the votes. Is this correct? Answer is no. For this you have to write SA 299, last requirement, reporting requirement. That means if somebody is not going to agree for the other auditor's opinion in joint audit, they have to issue a separate report, they have to give cross reference, all those things. Now question Z is in dilemma. You look here. You are required to briefly explain the responsibilities of the auditors when they are jointly and severally responsible. 6 points. And also guide in such situation. Which one? Reporting. So they asked you, right, when they are jointly and severally responsible. So 6 points you have to write. And also guide. Guide means here he is in a dilemma now. What is that? Should I give a single report? Should I agree to X or should I not agree to X? And you can say you are free to write your own report. Now comes the second one. Explain the responsibility of the auditors in case Y's actuary is found to be faulty. That means actually should have been 80. This is faulty. Two people relied. What is the situation in that case? Who is responsible for this issue now? Okay, very nice question. Let us see in RTP November 24 how this question came. RPS is the AGM for the valuation of a newly constructed infrastructure. RPS decided to consult their own engineers as there is a significant discrepancy was found. However, R agreed with the report of P's engineer while S did not agree. Now R argued that P's engineer should be included in the audit report due to majority of the votes. Now S is in a dilemma. What would be the responsibility of the auditors if the report provided by P's engineer is found to be faulty? Did you see the question, students, here, which has been asked? Okay, so that means some assumptions taken by this expert is wrong. Now, who is responsible? See, in this question, they are not talking about SA 299. Huh? Please see here. In this question, which has come in your tested knowledge, they are asking both. I can call this is an L3 question. But if you see same question they twisted, and they are specifically asking the second part of the question, what if the report made by the Y actuary is found to be fault? Who is responsible for this now? Okay, so I have written that. Okay. When we answer the second part of the question, we have to make an assumption that Z has issued a separate opinion. You have to make an assumption. And on his expert, and now and check the work as per SA 620. That means we have to exclude Z now. We say Z cannot be held responsible because he has issued a separate report. In this question, the question is very silent. Here also we can assume that he has issued a separate report. If his work is found to be faulty, it is those only R and P only have to take care because they have not complied with SA 620. They, before accepting that P's engineer's work, which is a faulty work, who is an expert, who is an auditor's expert, these two auditors should have performed sufficient procedures on their work. What is that procedure? Relevance and reliability of relevance and reasonableness of the findings, relevance and reasonableness of the assumptions and methods, relevance, reasonableness and the accuracy and the completeness of the source data. These are the three actions they should have done. Okay, so the difference of opinion, first when they are jointly and severally responsible, these are all the 6 reasons, and they are individually responsible for this. So they need not review the work performed by others. They can issue single audit report. However, they have to make a cross. There is nothing called a majority. So in the instant case, Z, one of the joint auditor is not satisfied. So he need not listen to X. he can issue separate report. This is one part of the question. The second part of the question, okay, assuming he has issued a separate report because he asked our advice, what if that expert report is going wrong? Then you have to say, SA 1620 has got two objectives, whether to use the work and whether the work is adequate. Now, auditor can use the work and one of the C area like employee benefit gratuity. This is one of the expert's work. So can he use that actuary's work? Answer is yes. But before using, what are the factors they have to consider? They have to consider relevance and reasonableness of the conclusions, assumptions, source data. But in the question, have they told you anything on this? No. So what we are assuming that this X and Y must have blindly accepted actuary's work, expert's work. Now that work has become faulty. So who is going to become responsible now? X and Y become responsible. Why that is not responsible? Because he has taken his work properly from his expert and he has issued a separate report. So Mr. X and Y will be held responsible for gross negligence. That will not be liable because he has issued a separate opinion. Are you clear, friends? Very nice question. Very tricky question. That's why I marked it as a priority. So they can ask you questions on this. Okay. Let us make one small mind map. Evaluating the adequacy of the work. One, what is included in evaluating the adequacy of the work? Evaluate relevance and reasonableness of findings and conclusions of expert. The expert's finding and conclusion. So what procedures you need to perform? You can say what procedures he may have to perform to check this. One, inquire with the expert. You make an inquiry with the expert. Review work papers. Discuss with another expert. I can say second opinion. Discuss with management. You check the results with this management. With this, no, you will get a fair idea if their work is reasonable or not. Or fifth one, perform some procedures. What are those procedures you need to perform? Observe what he is doing. Examine published data. Do some research in internet. Analytical procedures you perform. Re-perform calculations. Okay, so these are all the 5 activities an auditor need to perform in order to get an evidence that the expert work findings and conclusions are relevant and reasonable. So how? Discuss with the third party, discuss with another expert, discuss with the management, speak to the expert, check their working papers, do recalculation, perform analytical procedures. So what is the second thing you need to evaluate? Evaluate reasonableness and relevance. Okay, it should be relevance and reasonableness. Anyhow, hope it's okay. Of assumptions and methods. The first is findings and conclusions. This is assumptions and methods. So what is that you need to check? Whether it is generally accepted in experts field. Consistent with FRF, financial reporting framework. Depend on special models. Consistent with the management models. With management, okay, not models. Huh? Whether those assumptions and methods are of relevant to the management. Point number 3, what is that you need to perform? Third, evaluate again relevance. The relevance is there everywhere, but reasonableness doesn't come because data has to be always accurate and complete, because your this will be what's it called, your assumptions and methods, we can say whether it is reasonable, your findings can be reasonable, but your data also has to be accurate and complete, relevant of source data. Okay, how do you evaluate now? Verify origin of data, from where it came, who gave you, review completeness. Check whether this work is complete. Okay, now one question comes. Okay, we'll write it, friends. I'll explain you while writing only. What if work is inadequate? You can write one question. What if, okay, I can say something like this. Oh yeah, we'll write. What if work is inadequate? Okay, it's like this. I give an analogy. See, first of all, you have performed the check the reasonableness, source data, everything. So when you have got a report or a work, there can be only two scenarios. One, it is adequate. Then problem is done. You straight away go to report. What if it is not adequate? Like for example, you ask someone to construct one house. They have constructed the house the way you wanted. You found everything is fine, everything is perfect. Then what you do? You do Gara Pravesha. Done. You proceed further. What if the work is found to be not adequate? Like roof, there is some problem, or painting is yet to be done. Okay, what you would have done? First, you discuss the further work. You tell them, that contractor, look, this is the problem here. You have to correct it. Okay, and if it is not there, he is not there, then you get it done from somebody else and perform further procedures. Same thing happens here also. Look here. So if the work of the other expert is not adequate for the auditor, if the auditor determines the work is not adequate, auditor shall agree with that expert on further work to be performed by that expert. and perform further audit procedures appropriate to the circumstance. That means once they have performed the further work, again you perform, again you reevaluate, check adequacy. If the auditor concludes that the work is not adequate, so he cannot resolve the matter through additional audit procedures also, which involves the further work being performed both by the expert and auditor, or include employing or engaging another expert. It may be necessary to express the modified opinion. Okay, so if he is not able to address it, he has to address through modified opinion. Okay, so we'll write, this is a very small point. You can write here in the mind map. What if the work is not adequate? One, agree with expert for further work. Second, actually they missed this point in the study material. Agree with other experts. That means if this person is not willing to do it, he cannot do it, if he is no more, so many things can happen. In such cases, get it done by somebody else. Like the contractor says, I cannot do it, I'm busy now. So will you wait for this person only? No, you will get it done by somebody else. And then perform further procedures. Further audit procedure. That means you perform now your test of control, substantive procedures. Okay. What if not possible? Above procedures are not possible. If above procedures are not possible, that means if expert is not going to do the work, if you are not able to perform further audit procedure because an expert has not done his part of the work. So if you can do it independently further audit procedure because he has already, like for example, there is one small hole. So you only can bring one conceal and you can close that hole. Then done. This is called a further procedures. Some small patch up work is pending in painting. You only bring one paint and you start brushing. Finish. You don't need that expert anymore. But see, a big work is pending. This work, this expert is told I cannot do. Other experts are not available. You cannot do it yourself. In such cases, you may have to modify the opinion. No, students. And I hope you must have observed audit is applicable everywhere, in every aspect of our life. Where there is risk, there is audit. Same principles. So audit is not a subject. It is all about, it talks about the risk. How do you address the risk? And the same, this is, I got very much surprised to see that even at the intermediate level also, the same ditto principle, students, whether we talk about going to a tour or going to a doctor or constructing a house, wherever any risk comes, no, how we need to address that risk. It's the exactly same thing applies in audit. That's what I'm trying to do now. My teaching, no, I want to apply audit in my teaching actually. I want to audit you. Okay, so the last requirement number 7 is reporting. Reporting considerations. Okay, and this is exactly similar to SA 402. Okay, because we already discussed it, we'll straight away write shall not refer expert when expressing unmodified opinion. So you should not refer expert when expressing unmodified opinion unless required by law. So if the law requires, if the CAG requires, if the RBI requires, you can give a reference. But other than that, you are not supposed to give reference of any expert in your report if you are giving unmodified opinion. If modified opinion then you can if you are issuing a modified opinion because of that expert's work, then you can refer expert if relevant. Okay, if you feel that without referring that expert work, I may not be able to explain properly like why I modified, because that expert might have given some very what is it called, modified opinion. He must have told that something is not proper. And see, if you say that it is not proper, one question comes everybody's mind, like how did this auditor knows about it? Is he an expert? In such cases, since I am modifying because expert told me, it may be much more relevant to tell that I relied on the work of an expert in this regard. However, in both above cases, which is that case, when law requires, you quote that you relied on the work of an expert, or when you give modified opinion, you quote that you relied on the work of an expert. State that such reference do not reduce auditor responsibility. Yes, that's it. That's it, students. So with this, we are done with the essay 620 also. Okay, one last question is there. Let us go through that. Okay, the same thing I am not going to cover. Same thing. So MTP July 25 we'll see. HAM is engaged in the business of manufacturing electronic components. The production process requires raw material such as rare earth metals, semiconductor, okay, wafers, chemical, electrolytes. Okay, very complex related some raw material. Company maintains a large stock of raw material, the nature of which is technically complex and requires an expert knowledge of physical verification. So that means its physical verification is not so easy. This is your keyword to give you that they are talking about the expert here. Therefore, the management hired an expert to assist the stock verification process. So who is this? This is called a management expert. Simultaneously, auditors also hired their own expert to evaluate the inventory. Yes, by now you are very clear that they are talking about SA 620. But in SA 620, there are seven requirements. Which requirement they must be talking about? Because already we have seen, we cannot trust this. Everything is same. I just showed you one MTP. In one case, they asked about the written agreement. Another case, they are talking about adequacy. During the audit, the auditor observed that the work of expert was not adequate. That means that three conditions they have already performed: relevance, reliability, relevance and reasonableness of the methods, findings, source data. And after doing that, I told them there would have been two situations: either it is adequate or not adequate. And they got into this situation now that their work is not adequate. And they could not resolve the matter through additional procedures also, because we have seen what to do. Then including further work performed by the expert and auditor. So now what is that ultimate thing? They are going to modify now. Though the auditor was aware that he has not obtained sufficient evidence and it would be right to express modified opinion. However, he was reluctant in doing so. The auditor didn't want to give the modified opinion. He knows since the expert's work is not adequate, he has got no choice other than giving modified opinion because this matter was unresolved. But what he did know, what he did. However, he was reluctant to give unmodified modified opinion. He expressed a clean opinion, which is by it's the blunder mistake only. Why? Because when he has not got any evidence, how on earth he can give clean opinion? And included the name of the expert in the report, telling that look, he has done that, you can refer his report. See, he has told something adverse about this particular inventory, but I am giving an opinion. Makes no sense at all. Comment: is this work proper? Answer is no. 1 mark you are going to get. With respect to relevant standard, SA 620, you have to quote relating to the audit issuing the unmodified opinion. So you have to quote here 620, so and so, so and so. So we say that in this case, involve the work of an expert, he should express a he has not obtained the evidence, so he has to express a modified opinion. He shall not refer the work of an auditor's expert unless the law and regulation require. If it is the modified opinion, he may feel it relevant, but in both the cases, he should state that he is not going to reduce the responsibility of the auditor. So in the given case, so and so, so and so, you say that it is wrong. That issuing unmodified report is wrong. Okay, auditor should have indicated the reference of the expert does not reduce the responsibility. First of all, he should have given modification. He should have modified the report. So whatever auditor did is not correct. Yes, students, I hope you are clear. Yes, so I think we are done with this, and hopefully by tomorrow we are going to complete your essay 540. Yeah, because why essay 540 is a very big standard, very nice standard, and we have to discuss in detail, friends, because now if I start again, we may not find the sufficient time also. It will, instead of doing something half. So tomorrow morning we will complete. Maybe if possible, tomorrow morning we will do up to 9 o'clock. We'll try to complete this standard by tomorrow. Yeah, at a stretch we will do. I hope it's fine. Thank you. Yeah, hope I'll send the homework. You may have to write the homework today.